Hey, it's Bruce here, and I wanted to show you why I think everyone in the aquarium hobby should own a multimeter. Hey guys, Bruce here with the Aquarium Life, and today I just wanted to talk about why I think everyone in the hobby should have a multimeter and have some basic skills with it. There's a lot of different applications. With equipment being so expensive, it's good to be able to do some basic diagnostics to be able to figure out if you've got a bad power supply or what's going on. It's also good to be able to check your aquarium for stray current. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So I want to make this very clear. I am not a licensed electrician. I've done quite a bit, mainly with DC current with automobiles, but I've also understand quite a bit about household current. I've done enough there that I could maybe get myself into a little bit of trouble. But I am not a licensed electrician, and I'm not going to, this is for your information only, so, do everything at your own risk. I am going to, I definitely want to point out, like here we've got a household outlet. We're going to be staying away from these two main guys right here. And with the household outlet, we're only going to be dealing with the ground. That's that third part there in the middle. And what we're going to be doing there with that is we're going to put our ground probe in there. Obviously, we're not going to have this out of the socket and holding it like this. I just had this here to demonstrate. Okay, so the first part of this, I want to, show off my awesome 5-gallon nano aquarium here. We're going to be using this to do our testing. I've got my multimeter here. This one is a little old. It's actually from the 90s. Most of the multimeters you'd buy today, you can get one for as cheap as, I saw one at the home store for like $12. So that's a really reasonable investment. And it's going to be auto ranging, which means you don't have all these things to select. You're going to have choices between DC current, AC current, possibly amperage depending on what you buy, and probably ohms. And we'll get into a few of those here in the video. The first one, we're going to have this set to AC, which stands for alternating current, and that's your household current. I've got an extension cord right here that we're going to be using as our outlet, and we're going to put this in the water. And right now we've got a heater going and we've got a pump going. Now can you see what our reading is? What is it?
340.
No way.
Wait. 44.2.
Okay. So we've got a reading here of looks like about 44 volts. Your household current is going to be more like 110. You might see 120 there. And this is actually fairly common to have a little bit of current in the water. Any type of magnetic pump, anything with a mag drive, is going to produce a little bit of current on its own without it leaking stray voltage. We've got a glass heater in there, and let me show you this. I'm going to plug this heater. And our voltage significantly drops. So this heater, I don't know, I'm not a fan of glass heaters at all. I used to use them back in the day, and I won't put them in anyone's aquarium any longer. I've just seen too many of them break. I've been shocked by quite a number of these that have actually been broken and just throwing voltage right into an aquarium. I've seen them ruin aquariums. So if I'm going to sell anything, it's going to be a titanium heater. This is an older one, but it actually still works. Anyway, that being said, we've got a little bit of voltage in the aquarium, and that's normal. Now, if you're trying to, you're putting your hand in there, you're feeling a little bit of a shock, you're kind of getting a little bit of a jolt out of the tank, that is not normal. You should not have that. That's going to affect your fish. It could, and obviously it's dangerous. So what you want to do is you want to hook up your multimeter or your voltmeter, and you're going to systematically unplug everything. Another way to do it is to unplug everything from the get-go and then plug it in one by one. Whatever works for you. You just want to be safe, and when you're doing this, obviously you're not going to want to be putting your hand in there. You're just going to put the probe in the water, and you can see my hand isn't going into the water. It's just the end of that probe right there. So you're going to see a significant drop in voltage, and then that's going to let you know what the culprit is. Usually I see a lot of heaters causing the problem, so I'll look there right away, and or submersible pumps are your kind of your second go-to with that. And another thing I wanted to mention, so if you have a component that you've bought for your aquarium and it has a ground on there, do not break that off to try to fit it into an outlet. I've seen people do that, and it'll probably work, and most likely it'll be fine, but it's not safe. It is not designed to do that. If this has a ground on it, don't break that. Figure out what you need to do. They sell these adapters, and then people think, well, I can just put this adapter on there and I'm good to go. If you read the fine print on the adapter, this is your ground right here. So you're supposed to screw that down into a ground. So it's just something to think about, just something I wanted to mention because I want everybody to be safe. I don't want to hear about anybody having a fire, anything like that, anybody being injured because of electricity and something that could have been avoided. Sorry if I'm all over the place on this video. There's kind of a lot to talk about, and honestly, the way my mind works, I'm kind of always all over the place, so I apologize. Hopefully you guys can at least be able to piece together the information that I'm putting out. You've probably heard of titanium grounding probes. I'm a big fan of them. There's a lot of debate online whether they're needed, whether they could hurt the tank, blah blah blah. I'm going to tell you, with all the aquariums that I've serviced, I've put them on all the aquariums, and I've never seen anything adverse. So, you're going to go out and spend 15 bucks maybe for one of these titanium grounding probes, and if it could potentially save somebody's life, if it could save a piece of equipment or fish or whatever, I think it's more than worth it. I have not seen it hurt anything. It's got two plastic tabs here, so these go in the outlet, but they don't actually do anything. They're just plastic, and then it just has the ground part right there. There's also, if you don't have a ground available, you can screw this to a ground depending on how your house is wired. That's why that's there. And I had somebody mention to me, they said, well, if you put this in the tank, wouldn't this metal part here, cause corrosion or dissolve or whatever? No, it doesn't. It's designed to not break down in our saltwater aquariums. I've had them up for years. This one's actually, you can tell by the suction cup there, this one's been around a long time, and the metal there is completely fine. So this is something I recommend. If you don't want to use it, that's definitely up to you. I just wanted to mention it. I also wanted to explain to you what is the ground. If you're new to electricity and you're like, okay, well, I've heard ground, everybody talks about it, but what is it? Well, you've got on these, you're going to have your hot wire, which is the black wire, and that's where your voltage is coming from. You're going to have a neutral, which is your white wire, and then you're going to have just a solid copper wire that goes in, and that's how it looks from the back, and that's your ground. And then that goes into your yard. It's buried down, I'm not sure how many feet, but it's basically, so if something malfunctions or whatever, it gives the voltage a preferable path to go, and then hopefully you're going to throw a breaker. So that's what ground is. That's why I think it's a good idea to have a grounding probe on there. I mean, if you drop a light fixture drops in your aquarium or whatever, just better safe than sorry. At the end of the day, nobody needs to get hurt over it. Okay, so here's another use for owning one of these tools here, to own your, to have a multimeter here. It's, we're on ohms right here, and on mine it's got a selection for an audible, it gives you an audible indication if you've got continuity, and continuity just basically means that you've got a completed circuit through whatever. Now, switches of different types are pretty common in our aquariums these days. Some of them are getting a little bit more advanced, and they'll have optical sensors, but there's still quite a number of things that will use these float sensors, auto top-offs. I use these in overflows. If the switch gets closed, then it'll shut the return pump off. A variety of uses for float switches. So let's say you've got an instance and your float switch isn't doing what it's supposed to. Well, you want to know before you just run out and purchase something, is the float switch faulty? Is it a bad connection somewhere? Is it the controller? Well, we've got our multimeter here set on ohms, and it's got the audible signal. We're not dealing with any kind of voltage to speak of, so it's safe to handle this with our bare hands. This puts out just a tiny bit of DC current so that it can detect ohms. And then, okay, so we've got our switch here, and you can see we've got no continuity through it. Our switch is down here, and we're going to turn this, and we've got a good switch. So it's just that simple. So if you have any questions, you say, okay, well, this is good. I've tested it, it's good. Let's move on to the next thing that could possibly be causing the problem, whether it's programming in the controller or the control unit itself or whatever. We don't need to go out and buy ourselves a new switch. This is fine. Okay, so another use for our multimeter here. I've got this set over on DC current. Like I said before, most meters you buy today are going to be auto ranging, so you're not going to have to worry about all these different settings within the DC area. It's just going to be DC, AC, ohms, and then possibly amperage. I'm not going to be doing anything really on amperage today. That's kind of a whole different ball game. But now the reason why we're going to want it on DC is a ton of our equipment nowadays is controlled with DC current. You probably have a bunch of these laying around, and this is converting that AC power over to DC. DC stands for direct current. Things that are powered by DC are going to be, for example, your car, anything you're putting batteries into, your cell phone, all that kind of stuff. So one thing you might say is, well, I plug it in and it lights up, so I got to be fine, right? Well, I've done enough of this to see that rare instance where I've got a 24 volt power supply and it's putting out 18 volts. I've actually seen that, and the stuff lights up, but it doesn't behave the way it's supposed to. And so you don't want to rule this out until you've tested it. Especially when you're dealing with some of these pumps, you're spending $300 or $400 on a pump, and you don't want to just toss it in the garbage. Or your lights. I had, for example, two higher-end LED lights, and they both went out at the same time. It was really weird, and after testing it, it was just as simple as both power supplies went bad for whatever reason. I ordered up, spent $30 each power supply, and my $400 lights were back up and going. So it's good to be able to check this stuff out yourself. So this is a barrel style connector here. The outside part is typically ground. The inside part is typically your positive. So if you can see there on the meter, I believe we're reading about 24 volts. The power adapter is set for 24 volts. So it's given us the correct voltage, so we should be able to plug this in, and it should power up our power supply here, which it does. Now I had one of these that was bad and one of these that was good, and I can't remember which was which, but that's why I brought them both out here to shoot the video. So while we're out here, another thing I wanted to point out, so let's say we've got, like this is kind of an older Ecotech MP10, so it's probably not, worth doing too much with, but let's say, you had a brand new MP40 or one that was just out of warranty, you put a bunch of money into it, and you've tested, okay, I've got good power going to my board, and I've got, you should be able to measure power at some of the different pins here, and this thing just isn't spinning or whatever. You can take this apart with just a few screws, and of course I'm going to make it look difficult, but you can simply remove that from the board. There are only a few screws there, so if it's and this is just kind of a hypothetical, this could be any type of product. Do a search, see if there's parts available. We've got this down to a power supply, a control board, and a dry side here on this MP10 that all could potentially be replaced if parts are available. If this helps save anybody a few dollars in the hobby, then it's worth mentioning, and that's why I'm bringing this up. Alright, so I hope you guys have gotten some benefit from this. The biggest point to this video today was to show you how useful owning a multimeter can be. And I wanted to mention that if you're dealing with the AC current side of things, today we're only talking about putting that ground probe in that ground here. We're not talking about testing these outlets. If you're not too savvy with electrical, I don't recommend just jumping into it with both feet. Definitely do your research there, hire a professional, whatever. On a lot of these DC components, there's pretty low risk of any kind of injury, anything like that. It's not a big deal to take something apart, especially if it's already potentially broken. There are a lot of uses to having a multimeter, a lot of things you can check out. If you have any questions, please comment below, and I'd be happy to get to those. Maybe I need to shoot another video that goes a little bit more in-depth, one direction or another. And thank you so much for watching. Please check out my Instagram. It's vital_reef. Please hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you so much.